Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, Brian O'Sullivan had the honour of being crowned the 2021 EY Entrepreneur of the Year last month, and the founder of Zeus Packaging joins us now to discuss the incredible journey from humble beginnings to recording turnover in excess of €300 million. Brian, before we discuss the success of your business, Zeus Packaging, provide us with an insight into your own background.
I'm from a small area called Britway, near Fermoy in County Cork. I went to, obviously, the local school there, Carl, and went on to the vocational school in Fermoy. During that time there, the metalwork teacher was really good to me, and he I think saw something within me, Carl, and filled out the thing called the CO form, which meant that I went on to Thomond College in Limerick to do a teaching degree in metalwork teaching, drawing and maths. After that, the job prospects in Ireland were not so great. I went on and I did a master's degree in manufacturing technology, and that led me into, after that I went on to become a teacher, which I taught for a number of years before I got the opportunity, or I started what is now today, which is Zeus Packaging.
So where did the idea for Zeus Packaging come from, and was there a particular trigger that made you believe that a significant demand existed for this business?
I was selling crop packaging, which is basically wrap for wrapping agricultural bales of silage and net wrap. And I got an opportunity with that to sell one product, because the American company I was working with, they bought a big business in Europe called Borden that produced and manufactured stretch film for wrapping pallets. They had no distributor for Ireland, and they said to me, look, Brian, would you like to try this? I had no idea, Carl, what stretch film was or what it was for wrapping pallets, but obviously it's pallet wrap. I know a lot about it now today. You would expect me to. And that was the moment, really. So with an opportunity came along, they had a need, and I said, yeah, of course, and I went from there. So I started Zeus in 1998 with one product, Carl.
So provide us with an insight into how you then went about growing that business.
So the business started in Limerick, and at the time it was probably coming now in hindsight, coming to the end of the tech computer type boom that was going on in Ireland. And there was companies in Limerick, for example, Dell. Let's pick a big company that was in Limerick at the time. I know they're still there, and I know they still employ a lot of people, but at the time they were a huge employer in the Midwest region. So we supplied them with pallet wrap, with one simple product, and then they asked for other products, and the business grew from pallet wrap to tape for taping boxes to void fill products like bubble film and other products around the end of line manufacturing business. That's what the early days of Zeus were.
You've also completed a number of acquisitions, and that has led to the growth of Zeus. So talk to us about your approach to acquisitions and what lessons that you learned along the way from those.
The start of Zeus was in transit packaging. We were supplying a company in Dublin that was in the retail space. They were in the supermarket space. It's a relatively small business with maybe €2 million turnover. The bag tax was introduced into Ireland in 2001. That business, and a lot of businesses of that size, were very dependent on the vest carrier bag, because it was a very easy product to deliver to customers. It had a good value, and in a lot of cases those type of companies were up to 40% dependent on that product for their revenue. So when the bag tax was introduced, which was obviously a very good thing for the environment and what it's done, but those businesses were not sustainable anymore from an economic perspective. I was supplying this particular customer with pallet wrap, with end-of-line packaging, and he asked me would I be interested in buying the business, and we'd never bought a business, Carl. It was brand new to me, but I said, yeah, look, because number one, it would get us into the Dublin market, which I saw for the transit packaging, because we were based in the Midwest, and it would get us into the Dublin market for our transit packaging business, and we would see how the other type of business, the supermarket business, would work out. So that was our first acquisition in Ireland, first acquisition ever in Dublin, Carl.
So provide us then with an insight into your growth strategy.
At that stage, even back then, I wanted to be what I believed, a big player in the Irish market, and don't think that I thought back then, Carl, in 2001 or 2002, 3 or 4 years into my business, that I would be able to take this thing global. No, at that stage, I certainly wanted to be an Irish business and a substantial Irish business in packaging. And a lot of my competitors at the time, and now I suppose from an Irish perspective, are doing extremely well. And, I would say revenues in the, 8 to 10 million euro mark. And I suppose that was my target. And at that stage, I probably had it up to about 4 million, and this would have gone at 1 million, which was 5 million. So, to some degree, I thought I was maybe halfway there, Carl. Then another opportunity came on to buy a similar type business in Cork in the retail space, which we did. And I suppose some big moves for us were the big multiples, which, Musgraves, which is a big multiple then, and it's a huge multiple, in Ireland now. We got the opportunity to tender for their packaging business, and, we were successful in winning that tender at the time. And it's great to say that all these years on, we are still, a part of the Musgraves business, and they're very central part to ours, as we now do with, we've grown that supermarket type business with the rest, with Dunn's and Lidl and Aldi and all the other supermarkets at this stage as well, Carl.
I do want to speak to you about that whole concept of sustainability. It's very much on the agenda. So from that perspective, how conscious are your clients about sustainability, and how are you then developing a solution for that?
If I go back to the very start when we spoke there a few minutes ago, and I mentioned to you that I had one product, and that one product was pallet wrap for wrapping pallets. Even back then, Carl, what I was doing was that I was showing customers how that we could wrap a pallet with less packaging, less plastic. So Zeus has developed from that day one. That's been our modus operandi. That's what we have done. That's what we have done with our customers or our clients. So it's extremely important. Like we've been, if you go to compostable products, we've been selling compostable products for 10 years. I'm going to be honest, it was a very difficult and hard sell 10 years ago because they were more expensive than they are, much more expensive than they are than the comparable non-compostable or non-recyclable product back then, because it wasn't in the minds of all our clients. But certainly in the last number of years, it's become a forefront, and it's been a driver in retail. To have the most sustainable packaging. I wouldn't use the word compostable anymore because that's not true. It's about the most sustainable type of packaging. So as a business, for us to use the word competitive, and I'm not talking about price, but to remain competitive, we have to be able to show complete innovation and show more innovation and less packaging for our customers and our clients than our competitors. That's the main frame and the main way we are going to stay competitive, Carl, and that's what we do.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, as I mentioned, you were announced as the winner of the EY Entrepreneur of the Year 2021 last month. I often say that fist pump moments are rare in this life, but by God, was it one for you that night?
It was, Carl. The EOY competition is extremely robust. It's the most robust business competition, and I'm using the word competition, Carl, and I mean it, because for me it was a competition, and I've met some fantastic people in the alumni and the finalists from this year through this process, which started this time last year. It's a 12-month process where I believe approximately 150 to 200 companies begin the interview process, and that goes down to 24 finalists in 3 categories: emerging, industry, and international. And in this case, Zeus was in the international category, because I probably haven't mentioned it before now. We're in 26 countries. We're a global business stretching from New Zealand, Australia, all the way back to Ireland. So we were in the international category. So yeah, it's extremely robust. It's a hard 12 months, but the learnings from the program are absolutely fantastic, and the people that I've met along the way have been really good and great learnings from it, Carl.
And of course, Zeus packaging is a big part of your life. You have incredible commitment to it. And what I'm wondering in that respect is, what is it that gets you out of bed every morning?
The next challenge, the next goal, the next deal is what gets me going. Certainly, when you begin a business, back in the day, that was always what I wanted to do. But I suppose there's some part of it when, in the early days that when you take that chance, and, like I did, and I worked hard to become, a teacher, and then, you're giving it up and you're walking away from the job, and, you've got nothing, there's no safety net. I'd none. So, you have no choice but to make something work, because a failure is not an option. But like many do fail, obviously. So what gets me up all that during all this time is the next step and the challenge, and to drive the business on. And as I said to you earlier on, Carl, originally back then it was to have a business. Then the second thing was to have a business that was, one of the biggest in Ireland, which was great. And now I want the business to be the biggest in Europe. So I think it's just a drive for the next stage, which is probably some people a very difficult place if you're always getting up in the morning and there's no kind of end goal. And I don't think you should set an end goal. I've said this before, you should set interim goals, whatever they may be, and you reach those goals and you go, yeah, job done, I'm there, I've reached that goal, and now I'm setting whatever the next goal will be. So it's the next challenge, Carl. That's what gets me up in the morning.
And provide us with an insight into the size and scale of Zeus packaging today.
Today, so we might as well talk about 2022 because we're nearly there. We're looking at a revenue of about 340 to 350 million euros, spread across 26 countries, and that's not just selling in 26 countries. That means we're selling in 60 countries, Carl. But in 26 countries, we've got people, we've got logistics, and we've got a route to market. Zeus people with a route to market in those countries. So from the perspective of where that puts us, it puts us in the top 1, 2 or 3 in Europe, and that's the kind of scale where we're at today. But we're spread more than Europe now, Carl, as I mentioned there, where we've got businesses in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada, in the US. These are all, I would say, fledgling businesses, not very big, but they can give us a springboard to grow the markets in those countries as we develop them, or as if we want to develop them further, Carl.
And Brian, did you have to overcome any adversity on this particular journey?
Yeah, there's adversity, in business. There's adversity every day. So my job now, certainly, all the time, was a problem solver. So because there is issues and problems all the time. We've grown significantly, Carl, as I mentioned earlier on, by acquisition and by organic growth in the first 10 years. We're into our I suppose if you look at it, we did 10 years, then we were hit by the big recession. After 10 years in business, in 2006, 7, I know it's 8 probably before it started to hit us, and then for the next 3 or 4 years, it was awful. Our customers were scaling back or closing. Finance was not available. We had borrowed heavily to grow the business to that scale. We were at about 70 million euro turnover at that stage going into 2008. So we weren't a small business. We were a significant business, but so it was a very, very difficult time. And, our bank, stuck with us and was there, but I think it was due to the fact that they did understand that I was probably the best one to run the business, not probably, for sure. And we came through it, but it was a very, very difficult time. And yes, and when COVID, then 10 years later, approximately 12 years later, we had COVID, which hit in March of 19. And I was much more better prepared for that, Carl, because I'd learned an awful lot of lessons, back in the recession, about cash flow and about where we should be and kind of borrowings and all of that. So we were in a much better position coming into March of 20 into when COVID hit. We had built a business, Carl, that's across all sectors. So we are across pharmaceuticals, agricultural, industrial, supermarket retail, fashion retail. So Zeus today is 9,000 products, and it's across all different sectors. So we, even though one of the sectors, in this case hospitality, was the worst hit, was in trouble for us, but the other sectors maintained it, and some, even like in the supermarkets, grew through that. So we were in a position where we were able to to continue and grow even during COVID.
And of course, there is no straight road in business, and one of the key characteristics that I associate with success in business is somebody's ability to solve problems. So do you have a particular approach which you follow when you encounter a problem, Brian?
Yeah, it's to make it as simple as possible. Okay, I don't want to complicate anything, Carl. So I look for the most simple approach that's possible, and I don't have I don't have a business background, but I have a good analytical way of looking at something. So I take it that, okay, so what is the problem? What do we have to do? And then the problems in the business vary from at manufacturing level, where we've got some issues with a raw material, or we've got containers of product, stuck in ports or whatever. But the pieces that has stood to me best, and I think it's, for anybody that's, if people are listening here this morning, it would be, be absolutely straight and frank with the client or the customer. So if there's a problem or if there's an issue, you've got to say, okay, there's a container after stuck, or there's container stuck, or we've had a manufacturing issue, we've got machines gone down. And I think that the piece of advice that has stuck to me best in problem solving is, to be honest, tell the customer it's that. Then obviously they're not going to be happy, but they can make their own decisions, and that's all you can do. So keep it simple and be frank and clear with the customer, and let them know where you stand.
And Brian, finally, what are your future growth plans for Zeus Packaging?
So we're looking to get to a revenue of about 500 million euros, which is $500 million. And I think, again, that's not ego. I mean, to say $500 million, it's a huge number. And it's a huge number for any Irish business, because there are so few Irish businesses that make it to that number in whatever the business may be. So our 3 to 5 year plan is €500 million. We're growing organically. As you mentioned earlier, Carl, we've got now, very small customers, and we've got some huge businesses that we're working with, like, global companies like McDonald's and ASOS and all these kind of businesses, that they are growing. We are growing with them. They're looking for us to supply them in other countries. So that's the organic growth. And then we're looking for infill with some acquisitions that we've planned for next year in 2022, where that we see maybe in countries where we are already working and we see a gap in the market. If you take our Irish business, Carl, we are spread, as I said already, we're spread across nearly every sector. But in some countries, we might be strong in transit packaging, we might be strong in the supermarket retail, and it could be then a gap in the pharma sector or the corrugated box business. So we will infill with some strategic acquisitions, and we will grow organically. And the target is to reach $500 million in the next 3 to 5 years, Carl, for Zeus.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Brian O'Sullivan from Zeus Packaging, and I'd like to wish Brian every continued success on his journey to reaching $500 million in turnover.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
South